sharp. That's insane.
Billy Bush. What a pleasure.
Another compliment. There she is. Hey guys, hot mics on a Wednesday here, hump day. Hit the like and subscribe button. We're in Maine, still on vacation. Wow. Going to do something totally different today. Was going to get into the Anthony Fauci hearing. Fauci got Fauched by Congress, and he sort of Fauched himself, I think. And then I was going to talk about this when I was in Nantucket, the backlash on the influencers and all this fun stuff. And then the Jared Leto story from People magazine came out, and that sort of changed everything. Jared Leto is one of those guys you've known about for a long time, whisperings about for a long time, and yet nothing is actionable. He has been accused of criminal sexual misconduct by 4 women. The BBC has a documentary that's dropped called Jared Leto, Hollywood's Dark Secret. This is massive comeuppance for Jared Leto. His name has been around forever as a guy with shady connections to young women, young girls. Guys, this is crazy. So take a look at this trailer. We'll watch the trailer together, and then we'll get into it a little bit. Fire it away, Hair.
His band was having a concert. I was with another girl, and we were backstage. I was 17. He had sent an acquaintance of his, and he told me, you know, Jared's seen you from wherever he is over there, and he was interested in getting your number.
Jared Leto was twice Clara's age when she says they started texting in the mid-2000s. The Oscar-winning actor, known for his roles in Dallas Buyers Club, The Suicide Squad, and more recently in Tron Ares, is facing serious sexual misconduct allegations in a new BBC documentary. We've spoken to 10 women, several of whom met Leto as teenagers through his band 30 Seconds to Mars. Clara was invited to an exclusive hotel and brought a friend.
He was at a table with friends, just having some general banter about things. We had drifted into the realm to talking about the age of consent. I had mentioned to him my dad was in law enforcement, that I knew with certainty that here in California, the age of consent is 18.
So this goes on. It's about 3.5 minutes. It is one story after the other that is just kind of disgusting. And when I say massive comeuppance, I mean, you know, there's other people like this where you've heard forever that something is off, something's creepy, and then it bubbles up to the surface, and then it kind of drifts away, and then it comes back maybe a year later, and then it drifts away, and then something triggers it so that it sticks, it blows up, and something happens. Long ago, back in 2012, there was this girl in Hollywood, DJ Allie Teals, and she posted something in 2012 alleging assault at 17, and she put this innocuous line, "You're not really in LA until Jared Leto tries to force himself on you backstage at an M83 show in a kilt, in a snow hat." And what it did was open a deluge of girls, young women, speaking out and, you know, calling him creepy, calling him a predator, all these kinds of things. And these stories came out, and then, you know, that I think that's when it all began. And then there was a big expose in Airmail last June of 2025. You would think after that, I don't know why the audio visual experience is, you know, gets more of a reaction, but this was a big report, and lots of women came out, just like now in this documentary that BBC is dropping, Hollywood's Dark Secret. 9 women sharing stories publicly for the first time, 4 of them describing conduct that that can be framed as, or is framed as, criminal sexual conduct. All say that the encounters occurred between 2002 and 2016 when they were teenagers, and Jared Leto was in his 30s and 40s. The 4 core allegations: alleged statutory grape. At 17 years old, a woman says she had sex with Leto. He was 34 at the time, at his California house. She was 17. The age of consent, of course, is 18. She claims he shrugged off a conversation about her age, telling her, look, I want you to, call me daddy, and I want you to pretend to be my little girl. Clara is a woman who speaks. She's 17 years old at the time, says she was approached by a random guy and the guy said, look, Jared Leto is really interested in meeting you. Come meet us at the Chateau Marmont, which is, a swanky sort of Hollywood spot on Sunset Boulevard. She went, she met him at the Chateau. They waved her over to the table when she arrived. Conversation that night came around to age of consent. She said, my dad's in law enforcement. He shrugged it off. He knew her age at the time. She went to his house with her friend. He said, bring your friend. And then when he got there, they were both sitting on his bed. And he suggested to the friend, go sit in the computer room while Clara and I hang out. So the other girl leaves. And he said, look, he went down the hall and he's like, when I come back, I want us both to be naked. And then she was, and he said, there's my brave little girl. Look, 17-year-olds get in trouble, attracted to danger. I know I was when I was 17. It is incumbent upon a 30-year-old man, 35-year-old man to know boundaries and not take advantage of someone who appears to be, as adventurous as someone who's older. There is no excuse. Then there's this girl who alleged assault by Jared Leto in a motel bathroom. She was 17 years old in 2002, working in Las Vegas, named Isabel. She participates in the doc. You see her on camera. She said she was 2000. She met him in a Vegas mall where she was working. He invited her to his hotel and then said we would go out after that. She arrived. It was like a dingy, gross kind of motel. Someone with Jared Leto's wealth would be able to stay at the Wynn or something nice. He was in a dingy, totally, clearly, it seems to me, set up for her arrival. She comes and, he leads her. He says, I got to take a quick shower before we go out. He goes into the shower, calls her in while she's in there, starts to kiss her, grabs her hand, puts it on his, private parts and makes her take care of him in that way. She thought they were going out. They never went out. That was it. It was time to leave. He leaned outside the motel door. He looked both ways, left and right, to see if anyone was around, and then sort of released her. Jesus. So at 19, there's another girl who says she was 19. She was a former model, attended an after party. He was about 41 years old. She says she told him she was 17, even though she was 19. She said 17 to try to get him off the trail, get her off the hunt. And he replied that age doesn't matter. We're in Europe. When she asked to sleep on a chaise lounge, she alleges that he said that she'd wake up and something would have happened. Then there's all this alleged grooming via phone calls. This is a really this girl, Etta, alleges that Jared made repeated sexually explicit calls to her, at least once, suggesting that they have relations. Etta, it was 2014. He approached her outside of a modeling agency, invited her to an Oscar party. He said, text me. She told him she was 16 years old. And then the phone calls came from a private number. His number was not on there. The conversation started like, hey, did you get that modeling job? And you deserved it and all that. And then it turned to sex. He asked her, do you have any kinks, allegedly? He asked her, are you a virgin? And then he asked her, and I'm sorry to have to say this, can you squirt? This is a 16-year-old girl. She alleges that he knew she was 16. His lawyers then sent an NDA to her, and the journalist says to many others, NDAs were sent stating, quote, that a confidential relationship exists between you and me. There's a lot of stuff in this doc. A woman named Taylor, says Leto, then performing with 30 Seconds to Mars, signed her T-shirt across her chest at a 2005 festival when she was 14 years old. He made a comment about her body, had a bodyguard bring her backstage without asking, repeated the comment when her mother found her, and then confronted Jared. He repeated it to the mother. There are 4 other women who say they got strange sexual phone calls from him when they were younger. The BBC says it has corroborated several accounts through friends and family who were told at the time, and in some cases reviewed photos and messages from Jared. The BBC reported that Jared did not respond despite repeated attempts to reach him. I can tell you on a personal note, I have a friend whose daughter, and I know this girl very well, when she was 16 in LA, and they told me this 10 years later, but when she was 16, a group of 4 of them, they were invited to Jared Leto's house for a party. They were not invited by him. They were invited by a promoter, some kind of intermediary guy who said, come over to the house. On a different, there's a guy that participates who, I guess is an actor in town, but knew Jared very well. Back then, he said 2 girls would stop by a day at his apartment at his house, and Jared would seat them, and eventually conversation would be, you're a dirty girl, aren't you? And, this is a man who once said, everything is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. He said that publicly in an interview, and there he is. He would dress them down. He would sort of demean and exercise control. This guy's the actor, Simon, who participates in the doc, said one time a girl was dropped off by her parents. He took her to the bedroom. She had to contact her parents to pick her up an hour later. I mean, how brazen is that, right? That's almost like you're getting off on the danger of it all. Here's Craig Solo in the comments section. What bugs me is, why does it always take so long for these allegations to come out? If they came out sooner, he'd be behind bars already. That's right. Again, this is like, I think of people, the rumblings. There have been rumblings forever about certain people. Matt Lauer, Harvey Weinstein. You hear about it for a long time and it just sort of lingers. And then something breaks the camel's back. Teens hanging with adult men in a what is that? Who is driving them to see them? Yeah, Jackie is bringing up a point like, where are the adults in all of this? Look, my friend's daughter was 16 with her friends, suckered over to Leto's house. You don't know. I mean, the parents, the kids go out. Hey, you got to be home by a certain time. But, kids lie. They lie and say, okay, we're going to a movie. And they go somewhere else since the beginning of time. Don't think you can totally put it on the parents. If it's 2:00 in the morning and your 16-year-old is out, absolutely. Pamela says, I was stalked by a photographer when I was 17. I worked at Woolworths in Dedham, Massachusetts. I knew that the guy was creepy. He got my phone number from my manager and proceeded to call my home. Yeah, these are predators. Look, there's something, I think about Jared Leto. I used to cover him all the time. And whenever we did fashion, at an event or something, I had more fun putting Jared Leto's ridiculous outfits up. He was, he would wear these fluid outfits, these lacy things, a woman's dress or something. I think it's like, was this to sort of emasculate himself? You know what I mean? Like present this image that he's the opposite of toxic toxic masculinity. I'm kind of like you, he's this sort of effeminate guy with the eyeliner that he wears and all of this. And does that coax someone into feeling a little bit safer? I don't know. He presents himself as sort of this weakling in a way, soft. Boy, he's got some big contracts, man. How long do you think it takes for Gucci to drop him? I think Gucci, the whole Gucci fashion show they did, was it a year ago or recently on Sunset Boulevard? He's a big, big name, like Charlize is to Dior. This guy has a massive Gucci deal. I think this is the moment for his comeuppance. I bet by the end of the day, Gucci has dropped him. Pretty sure of it. Mary says it was a true helicopter mom, even before it was a thing. Oh, I was a true helicopter mom. Yeah. Here's to the helicopter moms. Here, mouthy broad media. There are the star blankers who feed this craziness. Well, hope you're not referring to the kids because, these kids, they can't be held accountable. But yeah, I just heard about this about Jared Leto for a long time. Yeah, LL says, this is why I stalk my children. Yeah. What is that thing called? Like Lifehouse 360 or whatever it is. You always know where they are. Yeah. Pretty good idea. So I just got back from Nantucket, as you know, and we were walking around the cute shops, cobblestone streets and all of that. And you go into these old stores, like there's an old shop called Four Winds Craft Guild, and they sell the world famous Nantucket basket. It's kind of, if you know, right? It's like a $12,000 basket. And it's beautiful, made with little scrimshaw, accoutrements on the basket. They cost like $12,000. But these old shops in Nantucket, which is an old whaling village, well, as time goes on, it's no longer a whaling industry. The whaling industry is collapsing. They used to hate that, tourists would come. And now tourism keeps the place afloat. And there's this whole drama there about influencers, right? To be or not to be influenced is the question here. And, the people at the old shops like this one, look at the sign there at the top of the Four Winds Craft Guild. No influencers. They don't want oh my God, you guys, here we are. It's a Nantucket basket. It's amazing. And people they've been around forever and you can get one for like this and use my discount code. I don't know. The influencers are a little bit on the nutty side, but you can't deny the ones that have been successful. And certainly in Nantucket, the influencer backlash is kind of taken to the streets. There's this new one. We witnessed it. Allie and I were walking after dinner. We were just strolling the streets, and there was this long line outside of Dairy Boy. I'd never heard of Dairy Boy before, but Allie knew it, and it was this influencer named Paige Paul. Her maiden name is Paige Lorenz, and I was like, Paige Lorenz, how do I know that? Well, I know her from the Army Hammer documentary, House of Hammer, which came out in 2002. Anyway, she's got this shop. She's taken her million Instagram followers and however many on TikTok, and she built this brand, like this fashion brand called Dairy Boy. And in having grown up in Nantucket, her grandparents, had summer place there. It was always her dream to have her own little shop on one of these cobblestone streets. So she went from social media to an actual retail store. And we walked by and there was this long line. I'm always amazed by stores that let you in, 4 at a time to shop. And then the next group goes in. And, there's so many. The reason why all these old shops in Nantucket are pissed off is because they would love a line outside their door and have to let people in like a bouncer 5 at a time to come spend their money. But Paige Lorenz, now Paige Paul, has this very successful shop. And we were there for the opening of it. I saw these dads with their daughters and these young girls, and they were all dying to get in. I said to the guy, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, this is it. We got to take our girls. We came to see this place. People are getting on the ferry to come over. And like I said, the old guard in Nantucket is pissed. The antique stores and the Nantucket basket shop and the people that sell the world famous Nantucket Reds, right? And Paige Lorenz, now Paige Paul, took to Instagram and social media, and she posted, what has moved me most is watching girls come to Nantucket for the first time because of us and fall in love with the island the way I did as a kid. It is ironic that the people complaining about the influencing are, the old guard in Nantucket, who are completely afloat because of tourism. That's it. If you're going to be mad at Paige Paul, who owns Dairy Boy, and her little shop and all her little influencer people who, influenced people who come over to stand in line, then you got to be equally mad at Ellen Hildebrand, who wrote The Perfect Couple and 5-Star Weekend and all those beach reads that have turned into TV shows. They're not online, but they're on HBO and Netflix. And that brings people to Nantucket. It's always a funny thing. Same thing happens where I live in the summer, right? There's certain people like, we don't want new people here. And let me be clear, I'm one of them. I don't want new people here. Stay away. We want it to be trapped in a certain time, right? An old school spot, trapped in time. But, a place like Nantucket, there's no putting that back in the box. So Paige says, if you call yourself a feminist, but proudly put up a no influencers sign, it's worth asking, who are you attempting to delegitimize and why? Everything Nantucket is proudest of was once new, and usually it arrived with someone the island wasn't sure it wanted. I have no issue with the shop who posts no influencer, and I hope people keep walking in and supporting their craftspeople. I just think Nantucket's story is more generous than that sign. Rude behavior doesn't belong to a profession, and everyone on Main Street is holding a phone these days. This island also fills up every summer with bankers, lawyers, and developers, and nobody's ever carved a sign about any of them. The one job that got a sign is the one built almost entirely by young women. I don't think it's an attack on women, though. I don't think it's an anti-feminist thing or a misogynist thing. I think it's just the old. It's a tale as old as time. The old guard doesn't want to see change. Look, here's my take. Influencer is a terrible word. I can't stand it. It describes the effect someone hopes to have, right? Not the work they actually do. Right? In some way, you could say, well, is it more transparent? Should it, you're saying outright what you're doing. But, would a journalist be called an opinion shaper? An advertiser be called a consumer persuader? I'll say this. Paige Paul is not just an influencer. She's a female. She turned that into female founder, which of course we know is the crown jewel, right? She's got her own store. She's got her own shop. Her brand is so big online. She got the open brick and mortar. So I don't know. How do you fight that? But then I was like, oh my God, Paige Lorenz. I interviewed. You guys remember when Armie Hammer was in my studio? Did an interview with him. And I was like, Paige Lorenz, oh my God, she was a huge part of the House of Hammer documentary. She described her emotionally abusive relationship with Armie. Said he branded her like with a knife. He carved an A into her hip or like pelvis area. She said that, she didn't meaningfully consent. She was pressured by the power dynamics. Armie pushed their relationship into weird BDSM kind of activities. For Armie's part, Rose City asks in the comment, did Armie try to eat her? I think that was someone else that claimed not her, but she said the relationship was emotionally abusive. I think Armie actually copped to that when he was with us. He said, look, I never did anything criminal, and all police activity or all law enforcement, suits against him have been dropped. So nothing ever happened that was criminal, he said, but he did cop to an emotionally abusive relationship. She said, yeah, she felt emotionally controlled by him. And there were these weird, rough encounters. She also dated Morgan Wallen. Interestingly enough, before Armie Hammer, she dated Morgan Wallen in February of 2022. She posted a backstage. She was backstage at Madison Square Garden. She posted this: "I love you and I'm so proud of you." And then weeks later, it was they broke up. But anyway, I got to hand it to her. She's kind of a hustler, right? And it all ties into this story about Arizona State University offering a college major or a BA, a degree in influencing. And people went nuts, right? I mean, you got to do your research on it. And when you do, it's not, I think, not as bad as it sounds. But they're offering a Bachelor of Arts at the Walter Cronkite School of Walter Cronkite, of all people, Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications, how to become an influencer. But they teach, developing media content, studio production, videography, podcasting and audio, storytelling. They're prepping kids for careers in things like social media manager, brand content strategist, digital marketing specialist, podcast producer. This is all legitimate stuff. I actually think their enrollment is going to go way up. It's kind of brilliant. And these are all legit careers. I just hope that people don't all flock to that and kids just want to do that. I hope there's still someone interested in becoming an engineer and maybe a carpenter or something. Did you guys see? What do you think about the influencer? Isn't that a terrible name? Influencer. When you tell someone you're influencing them, haven't you given it away? Isn't it all supposed to be a little more subtle? Yeah. Who watched Fauci this morning? Did anyone see Anthony Fauci before the Senate hearing chaired by Rand Paul? I turned on cable news. I turned on Fox, and I watched. I cannot believe what they call was Stonewall Jackson. The new Stonewall is Fauci. This guy, it did not play well, in my view. He showed up to disgracefully perform like that. He said, "My lawyers advised me that I should appear before this committee." He did not answer one question. To every question he was asked, he gave the same answer. Listen to this. 25, 30.
Advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, to everything. You have a folder in front of you, sir. I plead the Fifth. Were you pardoned by Biden? What reason were you pardoned? I plead the Fifth. Did you ever coordinate with the CIA? I plead the Fifth. Did you called it a conspiracy theory against you? I plead the Fifth. You testified you never traveled to China. You just trusted the Chinese scientists. You never investigated the lab. What does he say?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Are you aware that Dr. Xi in China at the Wuhan lab said she had over 100 viruses that had not been previously published? Did you fund gain of function research in these labs? And why weren't you transparent about that? Everything. I plead the Fifth. It was a complete waste of time and a total laugh. But the idea that this guy doesn't own some type of explanation, that he was, part of the cover-up about how that the coronavirus leaked out of that lab, and the perpetuation that somehow this came from a Wuhan wet market, when we know that, we were funding it through him. How he doesn't have to answer for that is unbelievable. And he doesn't have to answer it because he's been pardoned by Joe Biden. But in my view, he does have to answer to that. COVID led to $17 trillion in global debt. His role, integral. Yes, he has to answer to that. It's unbelievable. 40 years on that job. And even when COVID struck, he had no idea. He went back and forth as to whether or not masks were effective. 40 years on the job, had no idea if masks were effective in combating, airborne particles, aerosols. I mean, it's just an unbelievable. Jackie, that blanker, never trusted him and everyone in politics. And how about when, I remember I was working at Extra and, we kept the studio open and we changed our show to be more about, public health and what was going on. And we interviewed all these celebrities and they were falling over themselves over Anthony Fauci. The one that gets killed the most is Julia Roberts, but there were lots of them. And they were all like, oh my God, Fauci on a couch, we selling pillows and he's our savior. And I've never seen a guy. I guess when people are scared and afraid, you're looking for someone to make you feel calm. When 9/11 happened and I was sitting on the couch, I remember being comforted by the sound of Tom Brokaw's voice. But little Fauci looked like this approachable little guy, that you could pick up and I don't know. I guess he out of desperation, he brought some kind of calm for a second. But boy, was he lionized. And it occurred to me that he really didn't know much. And why can't he be transparent and say, look, we were doing our best. Gain of function research, we need to know how bad these, a virus like this can be. Can it wipe out civilization? And, put it on the Chinese. It leaked out of their lab. But yes, we were supportive of it. Why wouldn't you be more forthcoming? And of course, the criticism is that the guy was dragged in there by Rand Paul and the rest of the Republicans just to flog him publicly. And I definitely think there's truth in that too. And it's too bad. Our politics is so unbelievably divided that half the group thinks this is a waste of time. This is just a performance to beat this guy up and whip up the base. And the other half is unfortunately on this one where I side, that we need to know everything about what he did. Accountability matters. But he sat there and pled the fifth to absolutely every single question. And I think that is contempt. I really do. Couldn't believe it. Where does it go from here? I don't know. The Republicans would ask questions and he would plead the fifth. And then the Democrats, like Senator Gary Peters from Michigan. He's the ranking Democrat on the committee. He doesn't even bother asking questions because he knows, Fauci is going to plead the fifth and he doesn't want the answers. He says we have an obligation to examine, what went right and what went wrong. But this hearing isn't it. It does real damage. It only plants the blame on one person. This will dissuade people from public service. We should focus on bipartisan research and work. Okay. So he doesn't even ask a question. And then you get Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. He's just ripping the guy. You needed that pardon. Your culpability is on the docket right now. So many questions deserve answers. And I know you're not going to answer. So he just decides to pull out graphs and humiliate the guy. But boy, Fauci, you owe us answers, man. And the only, I can't decide why he wouldn't answer these, but part of it has to be that he just doesn't know. He still doesn't know. A man who was on the job for 40 years. Rose City says, I had to get that damn vaccine to keep my frickin' job. Yeah. Yeah. So did Sage Steele. And what happened to her? She left ESPN. She was pushed into getting a vaccine. And now we're learning a lot more about vaccines. But there was so much shame that came along with every action that Anthony Fauci took. People were shamed into doing things they weren't comfortable with. Fauci was obsessed with celebrity, says Rose. Yeah. Hollywood fawning all over this guy. Truth be told. It's just a shameful appearance by him this morning. Really. I mean, imagine this little guy sitting there the whole time. No answers whatsoever. All right, you guys, here we go. Update on the Amy Griffin situation. Amy Griffin, of course, the author of the book, The Tell. There was a huge hearing on Monday. I was on with you before the hearing, came to its conclusion. The judge, before the hearing, sent out a 25-page tentative ruling, a preliminary decision, basically, ahead of time. So both sides kind of knew his intention. He granted, ultimately, Penguin, the publishing company, he granted their anti-SLAPP motion to dismiss them. So Jane Doe, suing Amy Griffin for intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy, stealing her story of childhood abuse, basically. They said Penguin, the judge ruled that Penguin can be out of this, that they don't have culpability here, that pretty much it needs to be on the author. As for Amy, she stays in the whole thing. So the judge asked Jane Doe's lawyer, what evidence do you have that Penguin, intentionally did this? They didn't have an answer for that, not their focus. Amy's lawyers submitted the anti-SLAPP motion on her behalf too, and the judge has that under submission, as we know, but Amy's lawyers are all in on one point. And now that Penguin's out of the way, it's really just a mano a mano. Amy did not steal Jane Doe's traumatic story of child abuse. That's all they're here to prove. They don't even, they're not saying whether or not it's true that Amy's allegations, actually happened to her at the hands of this middle school teacher. They're not even interested in that. They're just saying all we're here to fight is Jane Doe's allegation that her childhood traumatic story was stolen or copied or appropriated by Amy. That's half the problem for me. The coincidence that the details of grape at the hands of a teacher mirror that of another woman from her middle school class. I mean, hands tied with a bandana. If you tell anyone, I'm going to rip your teeth out. These are in both accounts, both Jane Doe and both Amy Griffin. Cowboy boot in the middle of her back. Those are problematic, on their own. But Jane Doe never went public. She lived with the scars, attempting to heal them by, working for a center for abused children called Father's Ranch out in Palm Springs, California. That was her job. She was a private person until she read Amy's best-selling memoir, The Tell. But to most readers, and certainly the New York Times after the book was released, that these violent attacks happened, to the wealthiest, tallest, most popular, athletic, visible girl in Amarillo between the ages of 12 and 16. Nobody ever had a clue. They never saw a sign. For many, that's very hard to believe. In California court, assuming the judge upholds the tentative ruling, which I believe he will, that Amy can be tried for taking this woman's story or appropriating her painful past for commercial success. Amy's denying that as you know, that the Jane Doe who's suing her is the girl Claudia in her book, for whom she felt a kindred spirit and thought possibly they shared a painful secret together. She leads the reader to believe that the teacher didn't just attack one girl, right? Because as we know, most child abusers don't strike once, in a 35-year plus career. They strike multiple people, and mostly living in the margins. So Amy chums the waters with a disadvantaged girl from school named Claudia in the book, a girl who was vulnerable. She was quiet, living in the margins, as I said, one that would, more fit the victim profile of every predator before this alleged assailant. In legal docs leading up to Monday's hearing, Amy, says most emphatically that Claudia is a different woman. She's got proof of that because she contacted her, met her for coffee in Tennessee back in 2023, took a redacted selfie to prove that they were together, and even had her ghostwriter, Sam Lansky, join them as a witness. I think Sam is in witness protection now. I don't know where the hell that guy is. Nowhere to be seen or found. But I found, as I told you, the woman that Amy says is the real Claudia, an anonymous contact from Amy's school, provided me her name, actual name, because a relative of Claudia told the story to friends that Amy contacted her for these purposes. And, people tend to talk, especially in a small town like that. And now that particular woman who gave me the information has provided the name of Amy's Claudia, I believe, to Jane Doe's lawyers. So just in case, I think I would never reveal that information. I was sworn, especially to real Claudia, not to reveal, but the person who gave it to me, if they give it to others, that's out of my control. Anyway, this thing is going to be decided, might even be today, and we'll find out, how far this goes. But it's also happening in Nevada, as you know. Amy has her own federal suit filed in Nevada against Jane Doe, the reverse. And here she names the defendant. So we keep saying Jane Doe, but Amy names her, Joleene Altum. It's public. And yesterday, Jolene's lawyer, Chris Keller, filed a motion to dismiss that case. He claims this entire fight belongs in California. Amy's trying to fight the same battle twice, so it's just a jurisdictional fight. Joleene says Amy voluntarily litigated in California for months, and then with anti-SLAPP and other motions pending, filed a totally new defamation lawsuit in Nevada based on the same underlying dispute. Basically, when California wasn't going her way, she went looking for another forum. Both cases revolve around the exact same questions. Is Joleene the real-life inspiration for Claudia in the tell, the character? Did the abuse described in the book happen to Amy or to Joleene? And did Amy appropriate Jolene's story? So Jolene's lawyers are citing this thing called the Colorado River Doctrine. Interesting. Colorado River allows a federal court in limited circumstances to step back when there's an overlapping state case involving substantially the same dispute. And here, it's the same witnesses, it's the same former classmates talking, the same former faculty talking, same documents. Amy says, no, the cases only share a general subject matter, to which Jolene's lawyer said, no, you yourself have admitted the core dispute is whether Amy appropriated Jolene's childhood trauma to spice up her courageous tale of survival and self-realization called the tell. So this filing is only about whether or not two courts should be taking on the same subject. How do you think Karen Reed feels, right? There's like 4 cases going, but it's all about the same. Who did it, right? Was it the ex-cops drunk in the house who beat him up and left him bruised and scratched and all of that? Or was it this woman in her SUV. It's all boiled, but there's so many countersuits. It's crazy. My take on the whole thing is I believe Amy's trying to bleed this woman dry. She's not a very wealthy person. And Amy is. It'll bankrupt Joleene in Nevada to have to defend herself. So Amy's lawyers will respond to this motion to dismiss probably within the next 14 days. And there's 3 possible outcomes with Amy's Nevada case. 1, it gets stayed, i.e. Nevada will wait for California to resolve and then they'll pick it up and decide what they're going to do. 2, Judge Christina Silva will deny the motion outright, and the case will proceed simultaneously with what's going on in California. Or the 3rd is dismiss the Nevada case because of the Colorado River Doctrine, say this is already happening in California. It's out. We wait on that. So there's your update on Amy G. Fauci, unbelievable. Unbelievable. The gall, the nerve to sit there and plead the 5th. Such a performance. It was almost, doesn't look like a guy with ego, but boy, that was a big ego. And Jared Leto, holy mackerel. That has been around for a long time. And again, I know some girls who were 10 years ago, they were 16 years old and they invited to Jared's parties and there were nothing but underage girls. You know, with the old expression, where there's smoke, there's fire. In this case, there's a shit ton of smoke and there's definitely fire. So the comeuppance is real. Anyway, okay. Let's see a round of feedback here. Mitz Crowder says that Leto guy has a strong evilness on him. I saw that years ago. Yes, not to mention a beautiful chiffon dress. Jojo, I always knew he was a predator. You can just see it. Absolutely a pig. Don't be fooled by the eyeliner. Leto needs a life in prison as he gave a lifetime of trauma to so many. I hope the inmates give him oh, Jesus. Whoa, a dirt nap. Yeah. Go Amy. Get Amy on your show, Bushy. I know. Listen, I'd love to. I don't think she's going to come on. She's got litigation. But maybe her husband will come on. Wouldn't that be interesting? The billionaire investor. We'll invite him. Lawson, all these cases pending in federal court on Amy's case, or is anything pending in state court? Yeah, I mean, California, we're waiting to see, the judge issued the tentative ruling. He said the case against Amy can go ahead. He already issued that, but that was before the oral arguments, which happened on Monday. So if anything from there changed his mind, we don't know that yet, but we should know any minute. I think it's doubtful. I do think the case is going ahead. Diana says, can you imagine the entire country hanging on to whatever word you say? He loved the power. Oh, Jared, I think this guy. Oh, Fauci. Yeah. He loved the power. Oh, his little ego. Imagine this little bureaucrat, this little federal bureaucrat who sits in a corner office, the biggest nerd on the planet. He would walk through the cafeteria for lunch. Nobody knew who he was. COVID comes. He becomes this massive hero. And now he won't answer any questions at all as to the actions he took on behalf of this country. Any questions of collaboration with intelligence agencies, what he did with China, how much money he gave to China. There's his diary. Here's the funny, these are all over the place. Rand Paul put this up. What Anthony Fauci looked like every night when he wrote about how great he is in his diary. It's unbelievable. We'll have more on all of it. Make sure you're following our social medias and all of our accounts and hit subscribe right here. And we'll follow up on all of this. Look, if I can find somebody of interest to chat with about either of these things, we'll put up separate interviews before we convene again on Monday. But anyway, thanks for being with. Hit subscribe. Ta-ta.
Billy Bush. What a pleasure.
Another compliment. There she is.